I call the regular meeting to order for Monday, March 10th, 2025. Before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. I'd like to welcome members of the gallery that are here tonight and anybody that's connecting remotely from home or outside of the chambers. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, March 10th, 2025? Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes? Minutes of the public hearing of Monday, February 24th, 2025, and minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, February 24th, 2025. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bissett. Favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We're moving into delegations. We have one delegation tonight from the Cranbrook Buck Hockey Club and Bomer Consulting Group regarding the Cranbrook Bucks Community Impact Study. Welcome, Nathan and Kevin. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for letting us come today.
It's just push the button there. Bottom one. There,
Remotely.
got it. Yep.
Oh, you guys are so fancy. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Kevin Beamer, and I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before getting into why we're here today. So I am a CPA by trade, so a chartered professional accountant. I've been that for a long time. In my previous career, I was a director of finance for Yakanuki, which is Lower Kootenay Band, based just outside of Creston. I was also a council member for the town of Creston from 2014 to 2018 with His Worship Ron Toyota as the mayor. And currently, my current gig is I teach at the College of the Rockies here. I teach accounting courses. I've been there for just over 9 years. I'm also the chief bargainer for the union that represents the teachers at the college. And as well, I just recently joined the board of ACE, which is ACOM's community enterprise, where they do their economic/business development through. So that's just a little bit about me. My family and I moved to Cranbrook about 3 years ago. I used to commute from Creston while I was teaching at the college, which was a terrible idea, but we're grateful to be here in Cranbrook. They're lovely. Cranbrook's full of lovely people. So why I'm here with Nathan is over the summer, they were looking for someone to do some work, help out behind the scenes for some of the Buck stuff. And I started by doing what's called the broadcast director position, which is running the Jumbotron. So if you're watching a hockey game and you see an instant replay that's off, that's probably me. I did it wrong. But so that's what I started doing just for fun, just to help out the community. And in that process, I was talking to Nathan about, do the Bucks ever report on to the stakeholders of the community about what they do, what they are? And that sort of spawned this discussion. I think it's important to inform stakeholders of the value of any organization that they bring to the community, to the city of Cranbrook and the community as a whole. And so that's where this came from. I would assume you have the report that we gave out. I'm going to get into that a little bit. And are you going to go through that with the clicker so that I don't have to do that? You got me? Okay. And so, yeah, you would have gotten that in your agenda package before this meeting, and I'm sure you've all looked through it like good councillors would. As part of that, we do have a dollar figure, but that dollar figure is just a small part of the whole thing, right? So we will talk about all of it. We don't want to just get lost in the weeds that here's a dollar figure. With this, last year, the OHL, which is a slightly better league than the BCHL, did a valuation of the economic impact for their whole league, and they valued it at $450 million for their year, which they only have 20 teams, so that would be over $20 million is what the OHL's big economic impact assessment was for 2024. We're not them, right? OHL is a better league than what we are. We're closer to them than the KIJHL, but we're definitely not them. But just giving you an idea that where some of these numbers are coming from. We are not anything to do with the OHL study. Okay, so how did we come up with the $6 million figure? We'll just start there. It's based on actual data. So we took actual data of local inputs by the Bucks and associated branding with that. We really wanted to focus on tangible local spending that happens in the community. So we didn't fully follow economic impact assessments. We didn't include a lot of things that weren't actual local tangible expenses. We wanted to be really conservative. I am a CPA by trade. I'm extra conservative in these sorts of things. So we didn't include that sort of stuff. We focused on tangible local spends. Some of the things that we included in the study are mostly to do with the players, what the players are spending, billets, salaries, supplier costs, what visiting teams spend when they come here. Things such as visiting parents, scouts, refs, busing, camps that the Bucks put into that. So that all goes into that. And when we put this dollar figure together, it's not just the Bucks, it's the Bucks plus the Kootenay Hockey Academy team. So it's two entities. Obviously, the Bucks are the big proponent of that, but there is value from having the Kootenay Hockey Academy team, which if you read through the report, you'll see some really good stuff from Tom Shapika later on. Yeah, so that's very high level what's going into that dollar figure. So now I'm just going to go through some of the stuff here, and yeah, hopefully you've got access to it. Everybody, I think, has access to it, unless you're having a nap, which is okay. I'm probably pretty boring. When I was on council, I was a director of finance at the same time for Lower Kootenay Band. And then I would sit in the council meetings and they'd present financial data the exact same way I did. And I'd be like, this is terrible and boring. So yeah, it is what it is. So we have a quick note here about the Hideout Restaurant. Heidi had given us a comment about, they've got an extra 15% in revenue on game nights, specific to Bucks game nights. That stuff's not included in our number. We've not included that. We wanted to include specifically what local tangible impacts were from the Bucks. And then we got some volunteer hours. Nathan's going to talk about volunteer hours. You okay to help up?
Sure. You can switch for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just carry on from what Kevin was saying. The Bucks are a lot more than just a number and an economic impact and wins and losses. Many of your children or grandchildren probably see our players in school reading to them. Today, our players were actually out playing ball hockey with the winners of the Pink the Rink school, which was really exciting for the players and for the kids. So the amount of time our guys spend in the community, both staff and players, I think is important to talk about. One of the things we're most proud of here too, again, beyond just the dollars and cents, is there's actual human beings that come through our organization and go places. We have a really nice feature on our one of our best players to come through Cranbrook and Tyson Dick here. Players come to us from all over the place. Our current captain is from the Kootenays, and our leading scorer, who happens to be the leading scorer of the BCHL, is from Finland. So we really see a wide variety, and almost every single player that puts on a Bucks jersey moves on to play at a higher level or go to post-secondary education, which we're very proud of. I'm not good at tooting my own horn, so I'll let Steve do it for me. I'll just quote him here. But he talks about how our franchise here in Cranbrook has been a big asset for the league. Not just myself serving as vice chair, but what our franchise has been able to do as far as the standards of how we operate has been very crucial to the league's growth. Back to you.
Thanks. Isn't this so smooth? We didn't even practice this, but we're just so smooth, you're thinking. So then one thing, I wasn't surprised about the estimated impact that we calculated, but I was surprised that there are 83 part-time employees that are employed by the Bucks for game nights and all the other things that happen. And obviously, oftentimes those are people with low economic status, so giving them actual tangible cash is pretty awesome and wonderful. The Rotary thing, that's not included in our study. We didn't include that we operate a 50-50. We didn't include that in our economic impact assessment. We didn't want to overreach or accidentally include stuff. So Rotary does a whole bunch of things with that money, and it's wonderful. A lot of it goes to some of the school programs. We also have this lovely busing thing. I think they've got 2 buses now, and that's been providing service for some minor hockey groups and such, where busing wasn't an opportunity before, or it wasn't able to be done out of town. So once again, a lot of the things, we're not just talking about a number. These are real tangible benefits to the community.
And the last thing to touch on for us is Kootenay Hockey Academy, which many or Kevin has talked about before. I think the biggest thing here, and Tom did an amazing job of giving us this quote that I'll let everyone read through. But we're giving kids the opportunity to stay in Cranbrook. We did a couple of surveys for obviously purposes of this study, and one of them to the academy parents was, if Kootenay Hockey Academy wasn't here, would you move away for hockey? And 75% of the answers were yes, they would. And that's scary, and that's the way it was. And we're happy to provide this service now and be able to keep, especially some of the professionals as the parents of these kids are able to stick around. I know a few years back we lost some doctors, and it has an impact in our community. So we're proud to kind of fill that gap and be a part of a solution for that. So I'd like to open it up now to any questions from council.
Councilor Popoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Kevin. The academy, so you're supporting the local families, but are we also bringing in families from outside of the immediate area?
Yeah, that's right. We have, I think our current team, I think we have about 14 or 15 kids from the Kootenays that play on the team. And then we have about 5 or 6 that are coming in from Alberta or rest of BC.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. What do you view as one of your biggest challenges with the organization and longevity? Is there things that you're worried about, or are things you're in a decent spot with launching the academy, seeing that kind of grow? What do you kind of see as outlier threats?
That's a good question. I think the more cooperation we can get to accomplish the things that we'd like to accomplish, I think the better. There's a lot going on in the world of hockey that's changing in junior hockey. I think the BCHL is very well positioned to handle those things. So when I look at just our franchise individually, I would say that the more our community can cooperate with what we're trying to do, I think the more successful we'll be.
Thank you. Councilor Teskey.
Yeah, thank you. Longtime seasons ticket holder of the Ice and the Bucks. And I think one of the really important roles that you play is a community gathering place for the winter. Really does bring anywhere from about 1,700 to maybe, I think the peak was about 2,600 fans together. And we get to see our friends and our neighbors when we're there at the game. Also, I think I've heard it right that the team has won 6 out of the last 7 games leading up to the weekend.
We had a tough weekend,
Oh,
but
did you?
before that, the team was on quite a roll for sure.
All right. I hope they're peaking just at the right time for the playoffs coming up. So really looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Councilor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Nathan, just hoping you can talk about what the future holds for the Bucks. What do you see as a vision for coming years?
That's a good question. I see, we've kind of gone through our growth stages where we were a new team, people were, we were finding our legs. As it says in here, we used to be the team that would call around on how to do things. And now everyone's calling me because they want to emulate what we're doing here. And I see us, like you say, when we look to the future and what we can be, I can see us being the leader of how to operate a team in the BCHL and how to run a junior franchise, honestly, across Canada with the high standards that we hold. We're looking at expanding the academy. We're looking at expanding what we do. We're entrepreneurs. We just continue to look at the opportunities in front of us. But I've got a passion for the game, and we're going to continue to grow it here the best we can.
Missouri? Nothing? Well, thank you very much, Council. Thank you very much, Nathan and Kevin. Great presentation, and I agree. Probably a regular update, annually would really be welcome. I think the committee would look forward to it, and I just look going forward to some of the issues, with Hockey Canada, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly, the extent of the support that's needed, it's really realized now. Let's be honest, with what's going on with Hockey Canada. So I certainly see where, you know, I can see the relationship between the Bucks and the city of Cranbrook. We can strengthen that moving forward here. So thank you very much for this.
Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, can I make one comment as I leave?
You
I
bet.
just wanted to say, I didn't know Nathan from anyone until I started doing this, but this study, Nathan's been fantastic to deal with, wonderfully reasonable, level-headed, and he's definitely, everything's community. Everything is, let's do this as a community. It's not just, you know, about the Bucks, it's about Cranbrook as an area, and just how appreciative I am to deal with that, Nathan, on that. So thanks for letting us present.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Thank you very much. Okay, moving into bylaws. First bylaw for consideration tonight is from Engineering Development Services regarding Plail Road closure and disposition. Bylaw number 4162/2025. This bylaw is before council tonight for first and second reading. We have staff on hand to give us an overview. Curtis, we got Curtis? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Price and Council. This bylaw is to look at closing a 1.16 hectare section of Plail Road. The owner of the property surrounding the road on either side has come forward, undertaken an assessment, wanting to purchase this and consolidate it with the rest of their property. This really came up because we were looking at dedicating all of the gazetted roads in Cranbrook. So it became aware that they had a road through their property where it wasn't very clear before in Land Title's office. Yeah, so we're looking for first and second reading and to set the date for the public hearing. It's only first and second reading because it has to go to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit for approval.
Thanks, Curtis. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to Plail Road closure and disposition bylaw number 4162/2025? Over, please. Councilor Ray, Councilor Bissett. Discussion. Councilor Stetsky.
So I wasn't entirely clear from the report. So if this road goes and development occurs, there are options that the city can pursue?
Councillor Stetsky through the mayor. Yes, if the property develops and we need to obtain a road through the property as per the OCP's major road network, there's triggers in the Local Government Act where the city can require road dedication without compensation at that point. The road alignment here isn't conducive to building other road anyways, so it's not really overly useful to us. I mean, the most we get out of it's a path. It's a really old road that's narrow and windy.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give second reading to Plail Road closure and disposition bylaw number 4162/2025 and further direct staff to advertise council's intention to close the Plail Road dedication through District Lot 10359, Kootenay Land District Plan EPP 137518, accept Plan EPP 137517 in exchange for $3,000 plus administration, legal fees, and consolidation of 4100 Plail Road as per section 94 of the community charter and submit to the public hearing scheduled for 6 p.m. March 24th, 2025. Mover, please. Councilor Stetsky, Councilor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? All opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next bylaw for consideration is also from Engineering Development Services regarding water connection charge amendment bylaw number 4184/2025 and sanitary sewer connection charge amendment bylaw number 4185/2025. These bylaws are back before council tonight for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt water connection charge amendment bylaw number 4184/2025? Mover, please. Councilor Popoff, Councilor Graham. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council adopt sanitary sewer connection charge amendment bylaw number 4185/2025? Mover, please. Councilor Blissett, Councilor Stetsky. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaws up are also from Engineering Development Services regarding official community plan amendment bylaw number 4186/2025 and zoning amendment bylaw number 4187, 2025 for lands at 800/810 Cranbrook Street North. The bylaws are before council tonight for second reading for the OCP amendment and first and second reading for the zoning amendment. Can I please have staff provide an overview of the report?
Thank you, Mayor Price and council. This is the subsequent reading of the OCP that was given last meeting for 800 and 810, which is moving from a highway commercial designated area in the OCP to a split highway commercial and high density residential, as well as the first and second of the zoning bylaw, which sounds like there's quite a bit to it, but it's a little more simple than it comes off to be. Essentially, it's moving. There's 2 commercial zones right now applied to those lots because the lots were consolidated. So it's moving from C1 and C2 to a split zoning of just C2 and R6. Essentially, the split zone will be cutting across parallel to the highway and Kootenay Street right now. The applicant has provided a site plan that shows he would like to build a commercial, a highway commercial auto glass repair shop, and then in the back, high density 37 unit apartment building. Thanks.
Thank you, Connor. Can I get a motion to conclude second reading to City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, Our Path to Cranbrook 2042 Amendment Bylaw number 4186, 2025 is amended. Refer the bylaw to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation and submit to a public hearing to be scheduled for 6 p.m. on March 24th, 2025. Mover, please. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just looking at the layout, there's a lot of parking there. Does the owner applicant know that they might be able to come back at a later time and apply for a reduction in the amount of parking with the intent maybe we can get more housing units on the backside?
Yeah, absolutely. We would be dealing with all of that at the development permit phase. So after this, we would be looking at the parking and there's lots to take into account when we're considering that it's a split zoning and it's high density as well. So we can certainly look into that with the owner.
Very good. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4187, 2025? Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Blissett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4187, 2025? Refer the bylaw to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation and submit to a public hearing to be scheduled for 6 p.m. on March 24th, 2025. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next bylaw is also from Engineering Development Service regarding official community amendment bylaw number 4188, 2025 for a text amendment. This bylaw is back before council tonight for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, Our Path to Cranbrook 2042 Amendment Bylaw number 4188, 2025? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Bassett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Engineering and Development Services again regarding official community plan amendment bylaw number 4190, 2025 for the Wildstone Neighborhood Plan. This bylaw is before council tonight for first reading. Can I please have staff provide an overview of this report? Rob, we got up?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This application was received before or during the process of adopting our new bylaw, but we couldn't proceed with it prior to the adoption of the new OCP. The applicant is proposing to redesignate a portion of lands that are in the Wildstone neighborhood plan that front the Highway 95A to a new commercial hotel and retail commercial district, as well as proposing to delete and replace some text sections that speak to the commercial development and development phasing, which, to some degree is a little bit outdated. That the sections that we're looking at replacing speak to kind of specifics of what the development was. There's some notation on how the development had kind of stalled. And so we're kind of just taking that out because things have changed. But ultimately, the application will redesignate the lands from the urban holdings development district in the neighborhood plan to this hotel and retail commercial district to facilitate the rezoning amendments to the CD zone that would allow for future commercial development on that portion of the corridor of the current Wildstone neighborhood plan area. And in addition to that, one of the amendments that we brought forward and was acknowledged and supported by the applicant was to amend the OCP Schedule 17, the Highway Corridor Commercial Development Permit area. That should this application proceed, those lands would be then designated as a Highway Commercial Corridor Development Permit area, which gives additional oversight through our official community plan for the form and character of that development and site development. So there is another layer of oversight by the city, and so we're amending that map and also picking up a couple of parcels that weren't designated with the first round of adoption of the OCP just by virtue of slight oversight because of the zoning. So we're just adding that to that. So specifics of the commercial development haven't really been identified at this point, but it's sort of to start the process of that. So.
Thanks very much, Rob. Could I get a motion that council give first reading to City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan, Our Path to 2042 Amendment Bylaw number 4190-2025, and authorize public consultation on the proposed amendment? Mover, please. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Graham. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. As council knows, I've opposed any residential development further out. But I think for Wildstone, absolutely in favor of having some commercial space and hotel. It'll help the golf course in the long run. So certainly support moving some of this into commercial.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. The first one is, will that mean I'll finally have my road paved to the Cranbrook or the Wildstone Golf Course in a quicker fashion? That was the joke.
Okay, so the short answer is no.
I'm glad to see that we're refreshing the greater Wildstone rural holding and neighborhood plans. I think it's time for a refresh. I like the idea about possible hotels and other commercial entities there. I also like the idea that we're looking at our own city land on the other side for maybe some commercial activity there too. I think what Councillor Stetsky and I are in favor of, though, is saying those are urban holdings and they're not the broader rural piece. They're larger parcels that go all the way between Wildstone then and Shadow Mountain. And I think council need to meet with staff probably in closed or maybe open and talk about the future of those large rural holdings. So I don't want to see urban sprawl, rural sprawl happening out in that other area. So maybe something in the near future. Thank you.
Councillor Brother. Yeah, thank you very much, Rob. I really like the change here. A couple of things, I guess. Thank you, staff. It seems to me that we're really starting to get out in front of things. As you said, Rob, we're trying to get out in front of things, and this will make this parcel development ready. Rather than having to go through this process when somebody comes along later on, and it's a really good fit for that property. Secondly, we've been working with Modi for well over a year now on 95A on that corridor going through there, and this is at least now they know what to expect there, rather than just being zoned as urban. It's very difficult then for anticipate what kind of changes are going to have in that roadway going forward. So I think this is very timely. So it certainly helps us, and it's going to help Modi with making their decisions moving forward. So thank you very much. On that, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And thanks again, guys. Great work. And the final bylaw for consideration tonight is also from Engineering Development Services regarding zoning amendment bylaw number 4192, 2025 for land at 703 Cranbrook Street North. This bylaw is before council's consideration tonight for potential first reading. Can I please have staff provide a brief overview of the report? Santana.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we present to you an application to conduct a site-specific zoning amendment to the C2 zone. This amendment, if approved, would permit a food hub within the highway corridor exclusively at 703 Cranbrook Street North. For anecdotal purposes, it's where the Ignite Gym is on the highway, just to give you a visual. If approved, this amendment would allow a multi-purpose facility for the primary purpose of food processing, manufacturing, distribution, as well as training and education for food and agricultural businesses along our highway corridor. The way we're presenting this application tonight is it's been reviewed against existing and new OCP policies, facilities in comparable community, best practices, our existing bylaws, and a consensual professional opinion amongst the department. In short, it's really, really evident that this food hub would provide significant value to the community. The city's been supportive of the work that this organization's been done or has done to improve food security and strengthen our local food system. We fully understand the benefits from an access level and the economic development level and education and training. It's seen as a very substantial project for our community. But with comparison to other communities, it's been determined that other communities, our community vision, our OCP plans, it's been determined that this might not be the best location. The highway corridor is specific to the commercial and industrial development. And it's heavily oriented towards servicing the needs of the traveling public and specific to auto-oriented commercial uses. So and it's mostly just that we've presented them as option one, which would either deny the first reading and option two to proceed. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Santana. So this report is a request for decision by staff to either not proceed with the first reading or to provide first and second reading of the bylaw. Can I please have council move one of the two options, please, Councillor Stetsky?
Options 2 and 3.
Option
2.
Option 2.
Three.
Okay. Option 2 is, can I get a motion? Okay, that's Councillor Stetsky. So the motion is that council give first reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4192. We got Councillor Stetsky as the mover and the seconder is Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Bassett.
Well, thank you. As a question for staff, if we don't go ahead with this location, is there a suggestion for another location?
To Council Bassett through the mayor, there is multiple other locations in town that would permit this type of use. Currently, this type of use is kind of already regulated in Cranbrook. We regulate it in the C1 and, sorry, not C1, in the M1 and the M2 clean and light industrial areas. But it would also be permissible under C1 core commercial or also our mixed use commercial areas as well.
Councillor Ray, then Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate staff's work on this, and I appreciate all the background information and the report that was provided. In this case, I support moving forward to get the public input on this. So I'm hopeful that we will approve the motion we have on the table and that we would proceed to option 3 as well. In terms of the organization, so Community Connections is the umbrella organization. In their experience, it's a tight market. So they've been working on this since January 2024. And they did have an offer on another property in the summer of 24, which was unsuccessful. So in their experience, they're finding it to be a tight market to locate what they're looking for. And, as staff noted, this facility has significant potential to further enhance our community. So they've secured $1.35 million in grants, $1 million grant from the United Way. The deadline to use that is March 31st, 2026. And another grant from NCBC, deadline is November 15th, 26. So there is a timeline. So I'm just, based on the proponent's experience, they're finding it to be a tight market. So I will be supporting this motion, and I'm hopeful that we'll be moving on to the next motion here as well.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. And a couple of the same points that have been covered by Councillor Ray. $1.375 million secured in grants, but they need to have the ribbon cutting, so everything has to be done by March 31st of 2026 in order to secure that funding. And of course, food security, very much a priority for this council and for the OCP, so very much support this project.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thanks. Thank you, Mayor. Certainly we need a food hub located in Cranbrook. All the great work that I see folks in the crowd that have been doing on getting us to this point for the last 10 plus years, it's applaudable. So thank you for that. I want to ask it a little different question in terms of business tax. Now that, and it's a little bit of a story, but the lazy boy is now the lazy bear is now the cozy bear. What was the original business tax on that before it's now shifted to the cozy bear, and they're likely going to ask for a tax deferral? Someone from finance have that, or Rob? It was Lazy Bear in full operation. What was the business property tax on that?
Okay, so through the mayor to Council Popoff, we'll have to get back to you on that in the next report. We don't have the numbers off our hand.
And I understand from talking to staff that Cozy Bear through the organizations are going to be asking for a tax deferral. So now we're going to be actually by default city taxpayers are going to be subsidizing the operation of the Cozy Bear. It's no longer commercial. It's now in a different entity. And you can debate the merits of Cozy Bear or not, but that was not my point. So now we're taking this other property, which is a commercial property, raising business property tax, turning it into a food hub. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they'll also be very likely to ask for tax deferrals because it's no longer a commercial entity. There's more social enterprise than commercial enterprise. So if that's true or partially true, what's the question on that in terms of how much are we subsidizing social ventures in terms of missed business tax opportunities? I think that's a serious question we need to understand. And if we're going to be going to the public, they need to be aware that we're trying to cut corners everywhere we can with our budgets. And now we're subsidizing through business property tax, social ventures. That's one. The other thing is, I think we would all agree that maybe that's not the best location. It might be the most pragmatic because the clock's ticking. But to me, the best location would be in the parking lot that BC Housing owns right next to the homeless shelter, where they're going to also be building their social housing development, and then the food hub. To me, that makes a much better co-location in the long term than having it stuck out on the highway, where you're right, from the planning's point of view, it doesn't make sense that it belongs there. So those are my concerns right now.
Thank you, Councillor Popoff. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the one thing that I have a hard time making decisions based on hypotheticals when it comes to taxation. I know that could be a problem, but we don't know that. So I think we need to be cognizant of that, as well as when it does come to areas around tax exemptions. We only have a limited budget on that as well, and it's fully subscribed. So there's no guarantees that anything will be moving into our tax exempt status. So
thank you for that. Back to Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. I understand. I'm not debating the merits of this project. What we're talking about is the location of it, and planning is a very important role for the city. And where things are located has a major impact in the long term. So I don't want to be pressured by a grant. I'm not making a decision based on a grant deadline. I have to make a decision on what I think is appropriate land use. And I think that is our obligation as city councillors. So with that in mind, I think we should look at other alternatives at this point and leave the I am concerned about access and traffic and all that kind of stuff with being right on the strip. And I think this project should go ahead, but I'm not confident in this location, and I'm agreeing with staff that I don't think this should go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the diversity of views around the table for sure. Moving forward with this motion doesn't tie our hands. It allows us to get some more information from the public, may give the proponent an opportunity to speak at a public hearing. So in the interest of just having as much information as possible, I would ask that we support this motion.
Thank you for that. Certainly, listen to the discussion. I agree with Councillor Blissett. We're certainly not going to, I don't think anybody here is going to debate the need and the purpose of this. It's certainly needed, and I think council fully supports that. But I guess, you know, I'm fine with supporting this motion where we are today. We haven't fully approved it yet. So if we can get the process going and you know, if we do decide that it's not the right place to, you know, or there's other issues associated with this, we don't have to approve it on the third reading and moving forward on the final approval. So, you know, I'm satisfied right now just to get the process started, because, you know, oftentimes councils are criticized for delaying things because of process. So I'm always good at the first reading, always good at the first reading. Let's get the process going. And then we can decide thereon in, because we often find after the first reading, we get more information, or, you know, issues do come up that we weren't aware of. And so I think we've got enough information here, certainly for me to support a first reading. Councillor Stetsky, one more time.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At some point, it'd be great to hear directly from the proponents, because I understand there are commercial elements to what they're proposing. A lot of the activities that they're proposing actually fit under the current zoning without moving to a new zoning. Also, there's a reality about trying to find property and access grant money. And so I think we do have to, in the long run, consider that the properties that are affordable and available within this time frame are pretty limited around Cranbrook. And I know they've looked through a realtor and trying to find a number of locations. And again, go back to food security being really important. So absolutely, I think we should proceed, and if we can at some point hear from the proponent directly as well, so they can answer some of these outstanding questions we have.
Thank you. Further, council? All in favor? Opposed? So we have, I'll do that again. All in favor? Yeah, opposed. So it is, it's carried 4-3. Would you like your names noted? Opposed? Yeah. Next up, another motion. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment by number 4192, 2025. Refer to the Advisory Planning Commission for comments and schedule the public hearing for March 24th, 2025. A mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, so at that public hearing, I expect we'll hear directly from the proponents.
Thank you. Further? Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, and my point as well, if we're going to be having more discovery on this before or during the hearing, I'd like to know, one, do they qualify for a tax exemption? And two, legally, can they apply for them? And what is that amount? So we need to understand how we're further subsidizing some of the social enterprises here in this town that should not be on the strip.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Just further what Councillor Popoff brought up. I would like to know the comparison to what the tax rate would be on the strip compared to off the strip, and if there would be a difference. Because if that's a moot point, if the tax is the same on the strip as it is just off the strip, then it doesn't really matter in this conversation.
Councilor Bissett.
Thank you. I'm not sure that the taxation is the biggest issue here. It's about planning and land use. And so I'd like to focus on that. And I'm not sure that a public hearing will give us that information because truly expertise in planning and land use we have at the city. And we're getting advice on that right now. And I'm not sure that, you know, your average person in Cranbrook has a lot of input on that. I mean, they do as far as their neighborhood and who's beside them and that kind of stuff. But that's not the issue here. We're talking about the highway corridor. So I think we have the information on land use that we need, but certainly we could beef that up from staff heading into a public hearing.
Thank you. Councilor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, as noted in the staff report, for sure, this is land use is a key aspect of this issue, but so is community economic development in terms of that broader framework. So certainly appreciate the importance of our official community plan, which is still just hot off the presses. And I think there are times when it's council's role to take a broader view that can include other factors such as community economic development. The other thing I'd like to just touch on briefly is a slightly broader comment. A number of charities and certainly charities in our community are branching out into social enterprise as a way to increase their revenue. So they don't have to come to the city and ask for a municipal nonprofit grant. So I just want to highlight that. You know I appreciate the conversation about taxes versus tax exemptions. And as noted, tax exemptions are completely at the discretion of council. But I just would keep in mind that charities are trying to be entrepreneurial and trying to diversify their revenue streams and create consistent, reliable revenue streams and not have to come to the city asking for a nonprofit grant.
Thank you. Councilor Stetsky.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And of course, the role of city council is to look at the best long-term interests of the community. And every council, including this one, have appreciated the technical advice that we have from staff and then have voted differently. So that's not new.
Thank you. Councilor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. And just, you know, to make sure that when we do go to public hearing, it isn't a debate on whether we want the food hub or not. This is about where or land use planning. So we'd be cognizant of that.
Thank you. A question, I guess, for finance. You know, we're talking about tax exemption. This property then, if it did go, would be subject to them making application for annual tax exemptions, and then the council would decide whether or not we're going to provide tax exemptions. Is that correct, or would it automatically apply?
No, it would be subject to council decision.
There you go. So, you know, it will be up to council to make those decisions, you know, if you think, you know, it's going to be tax exempt. And for most, I think most properties and nonprofits, I don't think we do the 100% tax exemption anyway. So, we typically give them a percentage. So, I think it's worth moving forward at least to the next step. Anything further, council? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's a 4-3, same as the last one, Marnie. Thank you. We're going to move into new business. The first item of new business tonight is from Finance and the Airport regarding the airport's hold room space utilization project and BC Air Access Program. Can I ask staff to provide a brief overview of this? So we have Tristan here today. Welcome, Tristan. Thanks very much, guys, for the report.
There we go. We had a late opportunity to apply for a grant for an already approved project, which is the hold room upgrades. Last year, the BC AAP, so the British Columbia Air Access Program grant, that program didn't run last year. We weren't sure if it was going to run this year. There were changes at the province. Reg Faubert, who's managed that program, had moved to a different position, but it did launch. And so in February, when we saw that, we started looking at if we qualified for some of that, and certainly the project does fit. So really what we're looking at is that the hold room expansion we have currently designed in our capital plan to be a phased project. And for this initial year, it was upgrades of the washrooms particularly. And so that's a $450,000 estimate project. And this grant could fund up to 60% with another 15% possible add-on. And it's not like the airport's capital assistance programs from the federal government we're accustomed to. This is just a straight award. And then, we just have to show that if the project is over budget, we do have means to pay if the grant doesn't fully provide that funding. And again, I have no idea how largely sweeping across the province competition for this particular grant is. But what I am looking for is for a resolution from council to allow Elevate Airports to apply for the grant on the city's behalf.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you very much. Can I get a motion that council authorize Elevate Airports, Inc. to apply to BC Air Access Program on behalf of the city of Cranbrook for the maximum available funding amount of 75% of budgeted $450,000 project to fund the hold room space utilization project? Mover, please. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Christian. Next item up is also from Finance and the airport regarding the airport's purchase of a replacement snow blower. Tristan's going to speak to that again.
Thank you. Yeah, I probably don't need to really elaborate to this room at all the importance of snow blowers and airports. And we rely on 2 snow blowers to carry out business at the airport. One of them is the backup, which is, it's a 1984 unit that we've been able to keep running, but being as such, it's not as reliable as we'd like. And even the frontline unit has started to get to a point where components for it are reaching obsolescence, and we're having a really difficult time keeping that reliably running. We applied for ACAP grant funding to support this project several years ago. And every year it's been oh yes, you guys are approved, it absolutely fits, we'll push it back. But the funding just keeps getting pushed back. We're now anticipating it could come next year, but we can't wait any longer. It's too much of a critical piece of our maintenance equipment that we really can't do without. So being that Transport Canada only approves the supported grant funding for 1 snowblower for an airport our size, but we operate with 2. When that ACAP funding is approved, the objective would be to still keep that in the capital plan as it is now and fund the second snowblower with that, because we do need a backup. And so what we're looking to do this year, as you saw in the report, is to keep on track with our approved budget without any capital spending impacts, move the repaving project slated for this year in the parking lot to next year when we had it slated to purchase the snowblower, and just basically switch them because one is a higher priority. So it's just rotating one back a year, one forward a year. And we received tenders. We ended up with a few, which was good, 3 for that snowblower. And we were delighted to see that the unit that actually we see as having the most benefit was also the lowest price. So we tentatively are looking at the Abby Schmidt snowblower, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tristan. Can I get a motion that council authorize the purchase of a snowblower for the airport operations in 2025 and defer the airport parking lot resurfacing to 2026? Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Councillor Peabody, Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Tristan, knowing nothing about snow blowers, why was the Abby Schmidt the preferred model?
Thank you, Councillor Peabody, and through the mayor to you. The two other units were dual motor units, which many airports like, and it looks great. But dual motor units, from my experience, it's twice the amount of components to maintain on a daily basis, and twice the amount of cost for upkeep, and twice the amount to fail. And really, what we find with the single motor units on airports our size is the drive motor is hard on those dual motor units isn't really working anyway. Those really are required when it's a snowblower that works in community areas where there's hills, and you need a dual motor to one to be turning and the other to be pushing the equipment. In this case, actually, when we're rotating and blowing the snow, it's pulling the unit along in any case. So it's just lower maintenance cost, lower to go wrong, and it turns much better. And because it was the only submission with a single motor unit, I would also add that it does, I don't know if they're all using the same rating scales of the amount of snow but they move, but it's rated at 500. The others were all a little bit less than that. So on spec, it also looks like it does better too. So those are some of the reasons.
Councillor Teskey.
Yeah, thank you. You answered my first question about whether ACAP grant funding can be used for that second snow blower, so that's great. In terms of the parking lots, was there any grant funding available to cover airport parking lots that you've been able to find?
Great question. Through to Councillor Stetsky from the mayor. Pretty hard to find grants of what we've experienced for a parking lot expansion when it's a primary revenue stream that's not related directly to the air carrier safety. But we have been accumulating funds in our airport improvement fund for that specific reason. We've been watching that for several years now, making sure there's enough there. So we do have enough in our AIF reserve to be doing the parking lot work next year.
Thank you. Further council? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks very much, Tristan.
Thank you.
Next item of new business is also from finance regarding the 2025 parcel tax roll review panel. Can I ask staff to provide a brief overview of this? We have Charlene on hand tonight.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we have some subdivision and extensions of services, some new ones. So because of that, we have to have a parcel tax review panel set up. So basically, before a parcel tax is imposed for the first time, a parcel tax roll review panel must consider any complaints respecting the parcel tax roll and must authenticate the roll in accordance with the community charter. So this year, you can see, usually we just appoint Mike Peabody. This year, we've left it blank for council to decide who they want to appoint. So.
Volunteer?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to volunteer Councillor Popoff because he was very concerned about taxes tonight at council. And I thought, hey, what a good job.
I'll second that.
In my defense, I think Councillor Peabody's done an admirable job over the years, and we don't want to lose the value of that built-up experience.
Does it have to be a councillor? Can it be the mayor?
I can do it.
I'm fine. If there's somebody who prefers to do it, there's not, I have no problems. Councillor Papa, you're a good man. Thank you. Well, that's quite a way to volunteer. Okay, can I get a motion that council appoint Councillor Popoff, Curtis Penson, Manager Engineer and City Engineer, and Charlotte Osborne, Director of Finance, as members of the 2025 Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel, and further that council set the time and place for the sitting of the 2025 Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel to be April 28, 2025 at 3 p.m. in the council chambers, Wilbur Place. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. It's carried unanimously. Next item of new business is from Engineering Development Services regarding the development application fee rates review. We have Curtis, you can do Rob. Curtis and Rob, okay, to give us an overview of the report.
Again, thank you, Mayor and Council. So staff is bringing this report to you as a result of the work we've been doing on the development development incentive program, and also with respect to council's sort of ongoing requests to review fees with consideration to things like cost recovery and subsidization. And so what we did is we engaged with a third-party consultant to do a fee analysis that would compare our development fees against other comparable sized communities and even some local communities. It's noted that our fees were last updated 15 years ago with respect to the development reviews. So that, that being like development permits, rezonings and such. And so that was another one of the reasons, very similar to reviewing the parking rates, the cemetery, et cetera. So this project was intended to provide a comparison to see where we are at with respect to those comparable communities, particularly ones who have recently updated their fees. And then the comparison basically provides two kind of tiered, I guess would be two tiered options, a lower tier or a higher tier for cost recovery, and against those communities. And I think one of the things that I highlighted in the report, just as a matter of a note, is so for example, a rezoning application, currently we charge $1,200. We're required by legislation to do public notification. Each notification in the paper costs about $500, or about $540, I think is what I quoted in the paper. So out of that $1,200 application fee, $1,000 of it just goes to notification. So in terms of consideration of cost recovery, there's very little room left for the amount of time and effort that goes into processing applications, to do pre-app meetings, prepare the bylaws, sit in front of council like we are tonight, things like that. So we looked at them and we've acknowledged that it's been time, and so it is timely to have this discussion with council, because I think we are lagging behind when you see those comparisons with respect to other communities and fees. We are definitely lagging behind because certainly many of our fees aren't coming anywhere near close to cost recovery, and we do acknowledge that we will never get full cost recovery. That would be impossible. I think just the sheer amount of time, you just can't really equate to it. But and since even since about 15 years ago when we did the initial fees that were upped, at that time, I was still a planner here. The applications have gotten a lot more complex, a lot more complicated. They certainly require a lot more time and review. I think we're doing a lot more in-depth review when we bring applications to council, when we're not talking about things like, whether or not the infrastructure can handle it, and whether or not, traffic and those kinds of things. And that does take staff time. So when we look at our fees, we are quite low. And, again, I think the big one is just simply, some things like cost of advertising is a great example, which, we're legislated to do. And so when you take that into account, the numbers kind of speak for themselves from the math perspective. And so we looked at the different tiers, and the recommendation by staff is that we would look at the tier 2 to do the increase for council's consideration. There is an alternative, and I will note there's this typo. The alternative should be that council direct for tier 1. Yeah, and so I can answer any questions. And then I guess the only other item that we've added to the report is that with respect to establishing process and fees for road closure applications and agricultural land reserve applications. So that is something that we hadn't captured in the past. But a couple of years ago, the Agricultural Land Commission changed their process. And because we just don't deal with it enough, we deal with it very little actually, that it didn't really trigger that we needed to make those changes. But I can refer back to the most recent example where we had the ALR exclusion for the Kootenai Christian Academy. We didn't actually have an application fee to move that forward. So basically we were doing it, I don't want to call it pro bono, but it was a requirement because local governments are supposed to be the applicant on behalf of landowners. Through the resolution, we did capture that they had to cover the cost of the advertising, but essentially there was no capture for any staff time spent. And I was the lead on that one. And I attended, one on-site meeting with the Agricultural Land Commission, 2 online meetings with the Agricultural Land Commission, reviewed their reports, had to sign off on them. So there's a lot of work that goes into it for which we're capturing no fees. and process too, because the process has changed. And one of the things that's triggering this is we're seeing more interest in applications for land in the ALR, and we actually have a request that's recently been received. And also, going back to our OCP, those lands in the northern area are also in the agricultural land reserve. So at some point, we will be dealing with applications there as well. And similarly, the road closures. Road closures initiated by the city is one thing, because that's just part of our doing business. But we have, over the years, received numerous requests for road closures by applicants, such as the one we dealt with tonight, for which, again, there's very little cost recovery for staff time to do the work and do the preparations and staff reports. So that's really kind of the impetus behind a lot of this, which would, again, triggered from, our development incentive fees and that project that we're looking at. And, we'll have discussions about other elements of that as part of it. But we thought this was an important one to bring forward for council's consideration, to see the appetite for potentially looking at an increase to those fees to try and achieve a higher cost recovery.
Thanks, Rob. Can I get a motion that council received the information, received for information, I'm sorry, the City of Cranbrook Development Application Fee Rates Review completed by ESA Planning Limited, February 2025. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Popov. Discussion. Quick comment. Thank you very much. A lot of work, Rob. Great explanations, and it's a great report. And yeah, we've lagged behind. This council's seen that in a number of things. From the cemetery to, a number of areas in the city. But when I looked at the citizens survey that we did for the budget, and across the board, the citizens of Cranbrook for cost recovery, user pay, rather than increase in taxes. So I mean, this basically addresses exactly what the intent of that survey was, to get that information, and this is a response to that to that survey and the information you received. So thank you very much. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion that council directs staff to prepare amendment bylaws to update the development application fee rates to the Tier 2 higher cost recovery level for council's future consideration? Mover, please. Councillor Popov, Councillor Peabody. All in favor? Or pardon me, question, discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody.
Thank you. So in terms of trying to incentivize development, how these fees are, of course, all increasing, and I think they need to be increased given the time frame. But if we really want to encourage some business, how do we then go about incentivizing businesses to develop, or housing developments?
So through the mayor to Councillor Stetsky and all of council. So I don't know if you can recall back, but when we had the presentation by the first consultant we were using to discuss development incentives, application fees really actually only form a very, very small portion of the pro forma of an actual development. And one of the things that we're looking at as part of the incentive is that, we would bring back other options such as revitalization tax exemptions, perhaps discussions when we do the DCC bylaw, DCC waivers for certain types of projects. Those are the tools. I think the key here is the actual application fees. It's simply, it's the first step in the process to see whether or not a development can even fly. It doesn't make or break or decide whether the development is even going to go ahead. And from the perspective and the lens of cost recovery, we are undercharging, I think, a significant amount in some cases, and that this would allow us to at least bring us back up to, on par with similar communities, just to achieve that cost recovery. But from the incentive program, that's where the bigger discussion will come in through the downtown revitalization, perhaps, which I think we'll be discussing at a committee of the whole on Monday with council. The other development incentive area we've spoken about, again, DCC waivers. Certainly we can look at other fee incentives, particularly, and maybe in the building permit realm, where you could waive or reduce fees for not-for-profit affordable housing, for example, because that's the stuff that will likely make a difference to a development or a developer, whereas the application fee is just the first step, and that's just to see whether or not the land use is acceptable in a particular location.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Steskey.
No, thank you. So basically, this forms a very small cost compared to the rest of the potential costs, and we can provide incentives in other ways.
Correct. Staff believes so. I think when you look at the comparison in other communities where, as an example, some municipalities in our chart charge a base fee of, $1,000 plus X number of dollars for every unit. If we went to that route, that 300 unit apartment council has been considering, that would be a $15,000 application fee. That perhaps might be a disincentive, right? But right now we're looking at essentially trying to get fees to cover staff time and advertising costs. And certainly we have better tools that would be better incentive tools for development as opposed to versus an application fee like this. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Rob, I like where this report is going. I'm just curious if, the one line item that caught my eye was the increase in the liquor license fees. So I'm wondering if, one, you could speak to the justification for I think it's like a 275% increase. But also, liquor licenses increasing from a $400 application fee to a $1,400 application fee. If this is going to really hurt our restaurants and also might affect our downtown vibrancy and the patios that we're also trying to encourage.
Sure. So I think the one thing, again, I'd like to note sort of as a keep in mind is that the fees that we charge with respect to liquor license, those are for referrals that are received or applications received through the Liquor Control Branch application portal. So if a person was to apply for a patio endorsement, we would be charging them a one-time fee. It's not something that gets charged annually by us. Mm-hmm. These fees, again, are intended to cover the cost of staff time processing, Marnie, Bradley, notices in the news. In many cases, we have to do notices in the newspaper. We have to hold public hearings. Corporate services polls all of the staff in the various departments for comments on applications. We have to do mail outs to adjacent property owners. So it might sound like a lot, and it is a big number, but I think right now, again, for like a liquor license, we're quite undercharging. If we have even a $550 application fee and we have to do one notification in the paper, that's $540. Mm-hmm. We're at zero. And so from the business perspective, I mean, I can't speak for the business, of course, but I think it's not something that's going to be charged every time. We don't charge them fees for the patio itself. This is for when people make a new application, a change to a liquor application, or some other endorsement, by which then the staff here has to do the legwork to get those reports in front of council, collect the feedback to provide the information to the Liquor Control Branch. And there's a subsequent report coming that speaks to process, and involvement and stuff too. But I think, again, comparable to other communities, we're quite low on that scale as well. And I mean, I don't know, how many we get to that level where we're doing the public hearings and stuff a lot. But again, that is a significant amount of time spent at the staff level, creating those reports, collecting feedback, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I know I mean, nobody likes to pay application fees. I think that's likely, it might be a hit, but I think, again, somebody who is, downtown who already has their patio endorsement, they don't have to do it again. It's a one-time thing. So,
so just so you can clarify one thing there for me, please. So if a new restaurant or a restaurant that hasn't had a patio wants to build a patio onto our street and is looking for a liquor license or a change to the liquor license to incorporate that area, that would now be a $1,400 fee as opposed to a $400 fee. Correct. If this goes ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and particularly then, and I don't recall the exact process for each type, but many of those types of processes do require like public notification and stuff, which starts to tick up the expense to the city. And it's something that, if the liquor control was a sticking point, we could certainly look at whether or not there's scalable options. But I don't, kind of in my heart of hearts, I don't know if it would necessarily be a disincentive for people to apply. We're talking about, I mean, administrative costs is what we're really looking at here from the city's perspective to collect that information and provide a response back to the liquor control.
Perfect. Yeah, I think this might be one of the line items because it is such a big increase. And I think it will affect, the amount of patios and, I think it will hurt restaurants in one way or another, especially new ones that are trying to start up because it's not a cheap business to get into. But just make sure that we are actually just recovering our costs on this as opposed to, making money where we shouldn't be making money.
Sure. I think I can add one thing I can discuss with corporate services too, is look at the various types of applications we get and, perhaps have a scaled fee for, ones that do require notification, public hearings, et cetera. There would be a higher fee because of simply because of the cost required to process those versus much simpler ones that maybe just require a staff comment, for example, or something like that. We can look at examples and see what we might be able to come up with that. Yeah.
Councilor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, well, I guess one of the things that I look at is that this doesn't really incentivize development at all. It's another cost being added on and being passed down. And yeah, we look at the numbers as like, well, it's a $600 increase. But when you look at the percentage, it looks as a 50% increase. And that's always what the media always seems to run with. Whatever one looks worse is what they run. So, they'll be like, well, Cranbrook has increased development application fees by 50%. So how does that rate through the building community and everything else? That's dig into it, you'll find it. But I don't look at that as a positive for us at all, because all it does is raise fees. It doesn't speed up the time at all. All we're doing is just getting more money. So I am not in favor of this. We haven't got to the number 3 one yet, but also with the liquor licenses, same points as Councillor Peabody. As I look at the one we just approved for the Mission Hills Golf Course, they already had a liquor license. They wanted to expand their time a little bit, so now they would have been paying, upwards of $1,500. And for a smaller business just trying to expand to make something more viable, that might not be viable. We're into a position where a lot of things are death by 1,000 cuts, and this is now all of a sudden the 1,000th cut. So I think we have to be cognizant of that and how we look at this. And the other thing I will mention, and I think it's worth noting, is maybe we need to get a resolution crafted get some ideas that we get away from the archaic printing in the paper that 100 people read in Cranbrook. What are other ways that maybe we can petition the province to change how we advertise? Because I guarantee if we put a big billboard up on the property, more people would see it than what would see it in the Townsman. So I think maybe that's something that we look at, or how can we petition the province to change something like that? Because it's expensive and it really doesn't do anything other than we waste money on that.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I think has been mentioned previously, when we think of the updating our fees with the cemetery, to me, this is in that same category. If we haven't had an update since 2011, I think certainly a good time now to be looking at this. And I appreciate that staff has already mentioned that there's other options in terms of incentivizing that we can look at, and that already the feedback that's been provided is giving staff some ideas in terms of perhaps a sliding fee around liquor applications. As a fan of restaurants, I certainly haven't run one, but as a fan, I understand that the profit margin is certainly smaller on food, but larger on liquor. So I think that's an expense that folks would be able to pay off. So I will certainly be supporting this motion, and I appreciate the mindset that we have now to be looking at updating our fees regularly, because if we don't update our fees, it means that the rest of the taxpayers are subsidizing the work that's going on in terms of for these businesses. So I think it is good to be updating that and shifting that cost burden.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? We have 2 opposed. We have Councillor Graham and Councillor Popoff opposed, but the motion is carried. Can I get a motion that council direct staff to add road closure application and agricultural land commission application process and fees to the proposed development procedures and delegation amendment bylaw. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next item of new business is from Corporate Services regarding liquor and cannabis control licensing application referrals to the city. Can I ask staff to provide a brief overview of this?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this staff report is simply to look at potentially delegating the authority of these liquor and cannabis regulation branch referrals to staff. So the same process that was experienced with Mission Hills just last council meeting, rather than having the staff report and have the resolution required by council, potentially having that come in-house to staff to accept those. The big thing here is for transparency as well, is that if we do proceed to move forward to amend the bylaw to look at including that delegation of authority, that there would be an appeal process allowed to the public, so staff wouldn't be outright denying any application. We would look at potential measures to allow council to reconsider, and there'd be an avenue for that as well. But this is simply just to look at if this is a potential option, if council wants to go down that route of either delegating or not delegating, and this does tie in as well with the development application fee rates review that you just heard as well. There would be some tie-in with that. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Bradley. So this report is a request for decision by staff to either proceed with bylaw amendments to delegate referrals to staff or to not delegate these referrals to staff. Can I please have council, a member of council, move one of the two options, please? Councillor Ray.
Option 1, please.
Option 1. So the option 1 is a motion that council delegate referrals for liquor and cannabis application from the liquor and cannabis regulation branch to staff, accept applications for new establishments which will be considered by council, and direct staff to bring back necessary bylaw amendments for council consideration. Seconder, please, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, we're the largest urban center in the Kootenays, and I think this is an important part of our ongoing evolution from having council quite involved in operations to really being focused on governance and policy. So I think this is a positive move for our city, and I think this would help streamline our processes.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thinking back on our time as council, if it's things like changing hours or whatever, council has never said no. So I absolutely support this going to staff.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Bradley. Next item of new business is from the CAO's office regarding agreement between the College of the Rockies and the City of Cranbrook. CAO Virtue, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, Mayor Price. So I've got a few items here now. First item, this one is to seek council direction regarding a 5-year MOU with the College of the Rockies. So we've been in discussion with the college for about the past year, looking at a framework for having the college work with the city and providing opportunities for students and student programming and formalizing that. And so the college has signed off an agreement with a franchise that models that, and then we would attach ourselves through an MOU to that. And that would allow the college more freedom to do it in other places too. So with that, I'll just say that, partnerships with college or university or something that I've certainly had experience in during my time in Prince George. I did work with the University of Northern British Columbia to create a similar program where I had university students help me on planning programs, research projects up there. And I can tell you I've worked with hundreds of students and profs over the years I was in Prince George, and a lot of very successful relationships were built. The city benefited, the students benefited, and kept in touch throughout their careers too from some of the experience they gained. So it was an excellent experience. And that model was something that came out of what was called the Urban Alliance in Calgary. That was one of the first. That was 20 years ago. So it's evolved since. Now this City Studio has a model. You can pay them to attach to their model like a franchise, and they come with some supports, and that's what the college would like to go with. So I'll just quickly read through here, so how it would work. A couple times a year, the college staff meet with city staff when we identify projects. They then match these projects with courses and model the courses to fit with what the need is. And then the students work with us, and at the end, they have a successful project, and we get something, they get something. So it's a great model, and certainly something I'd recommend. The only thing I just note at this time is we've been working with our local CUPE. The one I did in Prince George, the CUPE there, we did not extend it to any positions operated by city staff. It was only things that I typically would have contracted. At this point, that's what we would do here. CUPE would be part of the program, and then we could see if we could expand it at the future. But there's enough here to go with for now that we could sign the MOU if council feels comfortable. So that's the introduction.
Thanks, Mark. Can I get a motion that council approve the city entering into a memorandum of understanding with the College of the Rockies for a locally adaptive partnership model for a 5-year term, and further that the CAO be authorized to sign the required documents on the city behalf? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky, then Councillor Popoff.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward, Mark. I think this is a great idea. Benefits the city and benefits students in the college. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So yes, great synergies and partnerships between the college and the city. Question, so will this, when we're engaging with the college and our staff are engaging with the college and their staff and the students, is that going to add on to the existing duties of current staff, and therefore there's going to be a budget matter for needing to create more staffing, or is this just part of their going to be added to their existing duties?
Councillor Popoff through Mayor Price, I guess two things there. One is, yes, but the time, because this thing comes with a franchise model compared to us sort of building it on the fly, which was a lot of work. This model provides a lot of the supports to provide a framework where the interactions are fairly limited and sort of a few meetings a year kind of thing. So fairly limited in terms of staff input, but it's what we get back. And so, like I said, my experience in Prince George was that, you know, I was able to get a lot of research work done and planning work and consultation and community engagement and things that I simply couldn't afford or couldn't get the staff and contractors to do was done with students. So we get a lot back from a very little input. So I would just say, yes, a little time, but the payback is wonderful.
Excellent. I like that. So we're not going to get a budget line item called city staff, city studio budget. Okay. And would the first activity be to discover innovative ways to fix winter potholes?
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent project. One of the lines from the report that really jumped out at me was that it brings together city staff, students, faculty, and community to co-create experimental projects that make Cranbrook more sustainable, equitable, joyful, and inclusive. I think so this will be an excellent addition to Cranbrook.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Oh, that's carried. Thank you. Next item of new business is also from the CEO's office regarding local options and public consultation for the gymnastics club and for childcare. Mark, you're going to speak to this as well?
Oh, yes. So thank you, Mayor Price. Back to the report. So this report on the agenda comes with quite a number of maps just for explaining the locations. And but the purpose is really gymnastics club submitted a letter to council looking for a location for a gymnastics club facility. And their request included a option to co-locate with childcare. So that generated some discussion internally in terms of a land review of where could a facility as large as a gymnastics club and a childcare facility co-locate? And that really resulted in only one potential location being down at Beaumont Park. So since then, we've done some more review and talked about some of the ideas that came forward. And I guess what I'd say is that we have options. And so as this council would like to be transparent with the public and involve the public more, there's some options here about public consultation. And I'll just say that the concept originated around being co-located at Beaumont Park, but what we found is the locations that might work for the gymnastics club that actually might work the best could be a location across the parking lot from Beaumont Park attached to the Western Financial, where all of the seniors exercise equipment and the gazebo are and the old playground. As that equipment is failing and run down, and now, you know, it's pretty much at the end of the life. We were thinking of removing it this summer anyways. So that site is a good location. The uses in that area are part of some of the issues we're having there with our security concerns and less desirable uses of the Western Financial grounds. So it kind of deals with that. So we could generate a public consultation that looks at telling the story of why we ended up down there and looking at a location by Western Financial for gymnastics. And also, the other thing is we've talked about in the past was a new recreation complex, like an area with a road with lots service that are ready for facilities that could provide recreational opportunities. And the only place we could do that is the North Moyer area. So we now have a bit of a preliminary engineering review of bringing a road into that North Moyer with water and sewer and a road, and that would generate the opportunity for some lots. And the gymnastics club would be the first lot up there. So that's a bit out of the core. The other site's in the core. The Moyer North site also comes with a bit of a price tag that it's about $2.7 million to run the services up there. It's just that then we have an option for further lots. So there'll be some pros and cons to those sites. Back to the childcare, or actually with the gymnastics, I guess the other point that comes across, and Councillor Blissett raises it often, is that, as the mayor has said before as well, that we as the city are not looking to build large facilities right now. Like, we simply can't even afford hardly to maintain what we have. So if it wasn't for groups like the soccer dome coming forward, the gymnastics club now with this proposal to increase the quality of life in Cranbrook by using other groups rather than taxpayer money, is something council likes to look at versus trying to find a way that the city could build these, because we simply couldn't afford it right now. Back to the childcare discussion. So the Gyro Park location, of course, did come with some concerns about the removal of green space. The location there was underutilized green space. Some might argue that, but it truly is compared to some other areas. And when we're talking about maintenance of green space, anywhere we can reduce lawn mowing is great. And so that was one of the things of reducing an operational cost. So there is an option here that Beaumont does make sense as well, co-located. And then as in the report, what we'd have on public consultation is the Beaumont site offers like a world-class daycare opportunity. If you could think of a childcare space that has immediate access to potentially gymnastics, skating, swimming, soccer, hurling, whatever, all in that little site, what a wonderful, like, that'd be the most in-demand childcare space I think we could have. So, but again, it is taking up a grassed area, although underutilized grass that we have to mow all year. If we can reduce that, that reduces our operational costs. So we don't really have a lot of options. And second to that, the province hasn't approved the daycare grant funding. I did talk to the province if they were going to consider a move if we get the grant. The only thing they would consider is a site that is just like the Gyro site. If it's significantly different than that, we'd have to submit a brand new application if they ever have another round of applications, and they don't currently. So if we want that all-day daycare in Cranbrook that we've tried to get, that would be the site for Gyro, we have to maintain a similar offering for them to consider it. It's not a given, we'd have to ask, but it would be worth consulting on. So that's what I have for you on this report.
Thank you, Mark. Can I get a motion that council direct administration to develop the two options for Key City Gymnastics Club and the two options for childcare facility for public consultation, to ask for resident feedback on options, issue the public survey, and then return to council with the results of the final decisions to be made by council? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Ray.
Do you want to? Thank you. So and it's going to be a statistical survey like we did the last time when we asked those budgetary questions, correct?
So Councillor Popoff through Mayor Price, yeah, and so the survey is actually what we're going to do is we have a survey that we were working on that is for garbage collection, for looking at, you know, once a week garbage collection versus every second week for composting and for organics. So we were already working on the need for a statistically valid survey that also has an open to the public option, just like we did for the budget survey. So we're going to attach this line of questioning to that survey. So it will be the garbage collection, organics, recycling, plus the daycare, plus the gymnastics, all in one big survey out to the public.
Excellent, thank you. And with respect to the structure, when you're asking the public for their opinion or you're doing a survey, one of the default questions is, or do none of the above? So do you like this location, or none of the above? I think in all fairness, that's how we should be asking each one of those questions. People might have no opinion or don't like either of the options, and then they're either don't do the survey and we miss the value of the rest of their contribution, or they don't feel like they were properly received. So none of the above might be a suitable third question in each one of those. And I like the idea. I think, you know, we had great success with the survey we did the first time, the statistically valid one. We learned some really good insight, and it kind of validated where we thought we were going. So I think we should be doing these statistical surveys frequently. Looking at that aquatic center as a possible place for the daycare or for the gymnastics club, I'm looking at the map, and right across 17th Avenue, we have a city park that's totally underutilized, that we cut grass on and maybe pick up a few bits of debris here and there. That may also be another location possibly for a childcare, because it's totally underutilized and utilized for the wrong reasons, and could be another location across from the aquatic center there. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bissett.
Well, thank you. One of the things that did come up in the staff report was about the utilization of parking space. And I mean, you mentioned about Moyer North, what that would cost about $3 million or so. And it did mention there's concern about infrastructure. So I just wonder if there's a location, say, I don't know, behind where the curling club is in that zone that maybe you could put a building without taking up green space, just as an option to be considered. As far as your suggestion, Councillor Popoff, regarding the park across the road, that is a riparian zone. It is flood hazard, and so that is. I know the city knows this. I'm just mentioning it now, but I do wonder about the parking area. I also wonder about the gate. You know, when you come into park at the back of Western Financial Place, that gate is always closed to go through to the curling club. And I'm assuming that's to avoid people like cutting through for traffic. But I'm wondering if there's something we can do about that, because we have quite a bit of the parking utilized right now behind Western Financial Place. And if we're going to increase the use, say with the gymnastics club and with a daycare, that might be a consideration as to looking at the parking patterns around there and traffic flow. I do think there is some, I understand grass needs cutting and there's that environmental impact of mowing it and watering it. But it is something, it is a value to be looked at if we can conserve it and use asphalt. Or even if we could put, it was mentioned about the infrastructure, can we raise the building so it doesn't interfere with that? I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but I'm just trying to think of options about using that asphalted area for development.
Thank you. Seal Fisher.
So actually, just back to Councillor Brissette. So behind the curling club, just so you're aware, that is that's the designated corridor for the new sewer line to go through. So that area is going to be completely dug up and redone back there. And then in terms of the parking lot, like I mentioned with the gymnastics club, we did have an infrastructure conflict, but that would require, just with the childcare center, there is a requirement to have immediately outside the doors the ability to have fenced areas for the different age groups to access grass. So that's where, having it placed on a green space with grass around it was kind of important in terms of the way it was set up for the childcare needs.
Well, thank you.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is excellent that, I think we've identified a best practice in terms of pairing a statistically valid survey with a public input survey. I think that's a really good strategy we've identified. And I'm pleased that we'll be able to get public input on these options. I think it's very innovative for staff to identify an additional potential site for the gymnastics building of the old library site and the current early childhood playground. And so I'm very pleased to see that. I did just want to share, and staff may already have this in mind, the early childhood playground was a multifaceted community project that involved lots of folks, including our family. So just, hey, if that's the best site, I totally support that. We'll see what the public input is. There's lots of positives to that site. Would just be to find a sensitive way to work with the folks who were involved with that. If there was any opportunity to recycle any of the early childhood playground equipment, like is the slide still good? You know what I mean? So just a bit of sensitivity around that. And then there is also a number of memorial trees in that area. Again, I think you get one of those big tree things and you move the trees. So those are all doable things, but just require a bit of sensitivity because those, and again, our family has one of those memorial trees there. But I'm very glad to see that site there. And I think that was, like I say, good thinking out of the box to identify another possible location. So I'm very pleased that we've got this on the table and look forward to this motion being approved and moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, when you were speaking at the beginning there, you mentioned that the city, doesn't have the capabilities to, take over management of a building like the gymnastics club or the soccer dome. Yeah, construction. But I guess, okay, so construction, yes. But do we have the capabilities to take over management that if these clubs did back away, that, if this building is on city property, there is risk there that the city may one day take it over. I just wonder if you can speak to that.
So certainly, so Mayor Price through to Councillor Peabody, the rec services review that we did and presented to council did show council an aspirational org chart to show that even under the current workload, we are a little understaffed with how we are structured in rec services. As the city's history was that as Western Financial went from the public-private partnership and then sort of failed and came to be part of the city. That was done by sort of just simply being absorbed, and we tried to manage that. And I'll just say, although we tried our best, the results haven't been that great. And so we're now trying to move into an area by shifting responsibilities between across departments and restructuring without adding staff to do better. But certainly, if we took on more work, we would really need to do more in terms of adding some staff to improve that in terms of providing the rec services. But I think back to some of the discussions that have happened at council over and over here is how do we provide an opportunity that allows for groups to be successful in Cranbrook? So through our support and our incentives and our granting and all those things that we can not have them be paid by or provided by city staff, but other means. I think that's the magic, and that's what we got to keep focusing on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Gymnastics need a new place, and we need a childcare center in Cranbrook. So back to just build a little bit on Councillor Popoff's remarks, I think if we give people an opportunity to say no to the above, the next line should be then where. It's not a question from my perspective of whether this should or should not happen. These should both happen. And the final question is really where.
Thank you. Before I go back to Councillor Popoff, Councillor Graham, do you have any comments? No? Okay, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. And if we use that piece of land where it's associated next to the aquatic center, it could be that we don't lose all of that valuable community playground equipment if it's still functional. We could use green space across the parking lot for a small kids park, utilizing some of that functional childcare park facilities, and maybe build a little mini park there too for children. So that's where it belongs, is on green space. So we're not losing green space. If that was the decision, could just put a new playground with some of the existing childcare playground equipment, either across the street or across the parking lot.
Thank you. Further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Last item of new business tonight is also from the CEO's office regarding the Cranbrook History Center Annual Funding Service Agreement and Loan Repayment Schedule. Can I ask staff to give an overview of this report, please?
Okay.
CEO Official?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Price. So one more for my 3 in a row here, and then I'll step back. So this one, there was a lot of discussion after the presentation from the Cranbrook Archives and Museum Landmark Society at the last meeting. And thank you to council for allowing staff to then take that away and put it into a resolution. So what I have before you here is what we think we heard. And I'll let Mayor read out what that is in terms of the recommendation, so we don't read it twice. But that's really all this is you've had a number of reports and presentations in the past year. And the results of the last meeting and discussion are now what I hope I've encapsulated in the recommendation in front of you for council direction.
Thank you, Mark. Could I get a motion that council authorize administration to develop a new simplified service agreement with Cranbrook Archives, Museum and Landmark Society for a term of 3 years with renewal options for 3 years each? And further, the council authorized funding of $120,000 per year of the funding agreement, reducing the annual payment by $14,000 to be directed to their loan payment or repayment for a total annual payment to CAML of $106,000 for each of the 3 years. Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Blissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So before I read out the next motion, there's an option to set an annual escalator increase of 0%, 2%, 5%. Councillor Peabody, recommendation?
I'd like to recommend that we do a 2% annual increase.
2%? Okay. The council set an annual inflation escalator increase of 2%, moved by Councillor Peabody, seconder Councillor Popoff. Discussion? Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. Is the 2% consistent with what we're doing with Key City Theatre?
So Councillor Popoff through the mayor. So Key City Theatre, we set a 0% escalator.
Yep. Clear. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Bissett.
So I'm a little concerned about an arbitrary number of 2%. I'm thinking that it might be better to have an annual inflation escalator comparable to the rate of inflation rather than an arbitrary number. And I think truly I'd feel most comfortable if we were to discuss that annually. I don't know that I want to commit future councils to have to increase by the rate of inflation. I think that should be an annual decision or by those councils. I understand we are providing some security by a base amount. I would feel a little more comfortable at the 0% to be negotiated annually, would be my feeling on this.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the question and the answer regarding the Key City Theatre being at a 0% annual increase. I think we've made very good progress with our conversations and negotiations with the Cranbrook History Center with CAML. And I think we're you know, with this agreement, we're providing stability, consistency, but I think we also need to be internally consistent as a city with similar organizations. So because the Key City Theater is at a 0%, does not have an escalator, I would prefer 0% because I do think it's important that we have internal consistency and fairness. And I feel that I totally understand, of course, the desire for an annual escalator, but I think we're already providing significant value with this agreement. And yeah, I would prefer 0%.
Thank you, Councillor Teske.
Yeah, we did have quite a bit of discussion, and I think it's important, first of all, that they have stability so they know what the budget is going to be. I mean, we could look at basing it on CPI. I do think the Key City agreement is different from this particular agreement, and I think the minimum should be 2% going forward.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wouldn't be doing my council liaison job if I didn't advocate for the History Center. And I agree with Councillor Stetsky that they are different, where the Key City Theater has the ability to bring in a lot more revenue than the History Center does. So I would just argue that the History Center may be more in need of support from the city than what the Key City Theater does. And I think that the 2% does adequately cover the average inflation rate. I wouldn't want to just market to inflation because, you know, when city sees higher inflation rates, that's when we need to cut our costs. So to just bump everything up by the inflation rate would just, you know, jeopardize the pockets of the taxpayers.
Councillor Popov.
Yes, thank you. So I think the word here is consistent. And that's what I think we've been trying to do with all of our budget deliberations and hearing from all the different organizations, internal and external. So the library, we did 0% this year. Key City Theater, we're doing 0%. And I think 0% is appropriate with the caveat though, that I mean, should the board come back and say, look, we are really hurting. Can you reconsider that for 1 year or a couple of years? But then it's a one to one year where we may have some options. And you're going to say we can't do it if we sign a 000, right?
No, what I was going to say, actually, the library does have an escalator. Yes.
There was
it's
an extra
2%, I
ask though
believe,
with the
yeah.
library, and we said
Yeah.
0 on that. So I think let's be consistent. They can always come to us a year later and say, look, something's happened. We need an escalator. But at this point, I think 0 is a good one.
Councillor Stetsky.
So just to clarify, the library does have an annual increase. So if we're going to be consistent, we can either be consistent with the library or we can be consistent with Key City Theater. And I'd prefer that we be consistent with the library.
And I believe that the Cranbrook Tourism also has an escalator. I believe it's 5% too.
Okay. Anything further? Call the question.
Wait a second.
Councillor Bissett.
So maybe we need to review our escalators. I think that is what has come to light tonight. And so again, I makes me more confident in 0 for now. And then we should review our escalation clauses with other groups.
Okay. Anything further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated. So looking at this, we've agreed to part of this. Yeah. If,
Let's go to number 3.
from what I'm hearing is staff, is that council wants more information from staff of what our escalators are. Is that not correct? No?
Well, not specific to this.
Does somebody want to make a motion then that you're thinking 0? Okay, if you'd like to make that motion. Okay. Seconder, Councillor Bissett. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, for 0 and 2 opposed. Councillor Stetsky and Councillor Peabody are opposed. Okay, now we can go to 3. That council authorize the CEO and the mayor to sign the documents. Mover, please. Councillor Bissett. Councillor Ray. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just happy to see this going forward and get it cleared up. This is, we've been beating this one up for far too long. So thank you. Now we're going to move on to administrative updates. We have 3 administrative updates tonight. The first is from our social development coordinator, Marcel Germer, regarding the BC Housing Point in Time contact. Marcel, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is going to be really quick. I just wanted to pop in and do a little bit of a heads up that our point in time count for the homeless population is coming up on April 14th. And in this week, at the end of the week, I'm doing an update to RDAK, and we'll start doing some media release in the next little while about the point in time. And the reason I wanted to bring it to your attention is that we know from the 2020 count, our number was 63, and in 2023, it went up to 116. And I think we're going to see another, an increase in this number coming up. But we have had some meetings about the point in time count, and they are really finessing the process of the count. They're trying to capture the youth homelessness that is not as visible in Cranbrook, but it is there, couch surfing and jumping homes and whatnot. They're also looking at seniors homelessness, which is, again, not as visible, but we know that they're living in trailers or campers, inappropriate housing, and or insufficient housing. So I just wanted to give council a heads up that we may see a jump in our numbers in Cranbrook in the homeless population that's showing up on the point in time count. Doesn't necessarily reflect more bodies living in tents. It may just be that they've done a better job of our count. And there will be some information media releases going on so that the community is aware that the count may look differently, and also the report to RDK. So I just wanted council to have the head up before we go there.
Thank you, Marcel. We'll go with Councillor Graham. We'll move this way. I think everybody's probably got a question or comment. So, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. And it's I don't like that the numbers change and they increase, but I understand, and it's good to get a fulsome understanding of what's actually taking place. It's unfortunate that with these numbers increasing, that we're still not seeing any action by BC Housing. We have a shelter that's not open, and when it is open, it already doesn't have enough beds. Where there's, so I think there's a lot of work to do on our end with advocacy to make sure that we are able to meet the need, or make sure that the province can meet the need, because the need is clearly not being met and hasn't been met in a long time.
You, Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you. Marcel, when the study occurs, will there be a breakdown from the total of what is the actual homeless living in the tents versus the underhoused?
I think it'll be similar to the last couple times where they say whether you're chronically homeless or whether you are couch surfing. There was for teens and stuff. So there was some impact, but there isn't a lot of information yet. We did, after our first meeting, when he discussed that there would be a difference in how they were counting, especially the youth and whatnot. We did send out a backup email saying, hey, can you break this down for us a little bit so that we can do proper communication? Really didn't come back with anything other than that the count would be, it would just be more fulsome. So I can look into that more, but I don't know yet that it'll be broke down any differently.
Sure, thank you. I mean, if we just report one number and we don't realize there are different meanings behind certain categories, I think we're losing some real value there. We didn't talk about other types of housing as well, but I think having the different metrics in there might have some greater discussion value. And what does this mean for how things can go forward positively?
And I could certainly look into, like I said, it is a BC Housing thing, and Community Connections runs the count, but we could certainly make that recommendation or see if we could break it out ourselves from the information.
Thank you. Nothing? Councillor Bissett?
I am just concerned that the information be communicated as accurately as possible, especially if there has been a change in methodology or on the data. Because, yeah, it could be quite shock. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers will be, but more information is always better, and with the numbers. So if I could ask that, that would be much appreciated when it comes to releases and that, because there is, you know, there's a lot of emotion attached to these numbers in a variety of ways. And so more clarification is important.
And I will do do the best to try to get that in there. I'm not sure how they're not. We can't always get the response that we want when we reach out, but definitely we're ahead of this and knowing that we want to do some preparatory work and get people ready for a higher number and give them the information why it might be higher, because we do believe that our population has been pretty stable over the last 6 months. So we don't want them, to scare the community that we're growing at a rapid pace. So, and we don't know, maybe it won't show a huge difference, but we do know in other communities across BC that have the count has been completed already, that we are seeing quite a bit higher number in those communities. So.
Thank you.
And I think just a thought, so comparison to other communities would be really helpful too. Because sometimes I think people think it's just us. And it would be good to have, looking at what's happening in Nelson, what's happening in Castlegar, and other areas of concern, just as a point of comparison and sort of reference for people who live in Cranbrook.
Okay. Take that.
Yep. Councillor Rigo, Councillor Teske.
You mentioned that seniors would be split out. Will they also split out youth and maybe family units?
Councillor Setsky through the mayor. From my understanding, they're working with Foundry on this. So Foundry is doing some group events and some youth events and whatnot to get the count through there. And that's how they figure they're going to do and I do believe they said that there was some working with the senior organization too to try to capture that number. But so yes, they're definitely focusing on youth, because I think they believe they sort of missed the youth count in Cranbrook, because youth aren't left to be intense. Like if you're under 19, then there's a call to the Ministry of Child and Family, and then they come in, so youth hide better at it. They're not as visible if they're homeless.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marcel, and thank you for the terrific job you do.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Next up is Engineering Development Services and Economic Development Officer Darren Brewer regarding the Economic Development and Export Award. Darren, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. The city were successful in our application to CanExport Community Investment Program of Global Affairs Canada. It's a non-repairable grant helping Canadian communities attract FDI or foreign direct investment. Over the past 5 years, the city's collaborated multiple times with Global Affairs Canada. They helped us build the Choose Cranbrook brand. Subsequently, our FDI investment attraction strategy and the FDI attraction videos that Council has seen recently, all of these were done in part with Global Affairs and CanExport. This is also in collaboration with regional partners in Calgary and in Spokane. We're going to be exploring opportunities to diversify our economy by leveraging existing and emerging supply chains in the Pacific Northwest. The project will conduct strategic planning and analysis, which is the lion's share of the funding goes to a business case and a regional FDI attraction study. These will be done through what we're calling insight forums, but we'll be visiting Calgary, Spokane, and have an event in Cranbrook as well, where we'll be bringing in key stakeholders to start building out this strategy. Initial response has been very strong. We have over 30 qualified stakeholders to date, including representatives from Global Affairs Canada, the Canadian Consulate, province of BC, Alberta, and Quebec, as well as Washington State, Montana, Alaska, Idaho, and First Nation partners.
So there's quite a few different groups involved in this. Project's going to cost $81,000 in total, 41,000 coming from the city and 41,000 coming from Global Affairs. And I will now open up the floor for any comments or questions.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering what the prudence is of a project like this in the current climate that we are in between Canada and the US. Are we just wasting the money, and should we be looking at other opportunities with maybe the EU or others? Because you can have all the partnerships you want, but if President Trump is not on side, nothing will happen.
Mayor Price, through to Councillor Graham, that's a great question. Great comment. I think in part, this is exactly why we need to be doing this now. We need to be agile. Supply chains are being rewritten or will be rewritten over the course of the next calendar year. So the fact that we're actually in the conversation right now is to our benefit. The program, as when we applied for it, was focused on the US. Having said that, it was clear in my conversations with Global Affairs that we're able to change some of the details as far as the scope goes. As far as potential partners go, obviously ASEAN nations, Asian nations would be very close to us and have a high propensity for partnership with FDI. I would also say that it's also in keeping with from the Premier Eby and his statements on different states, blue and red states, and for those for council, Washington State's obviously a Democrat state, the province of BC and the state of Washington, whether or not the president in Washington he thinks so, we're pretty close and very intertwined. So I would say that, it's very important for us to have a long-term strategy. Look at this, we can't look at the present issues, let's say. We have to really look at in somewhat of like a 10-year focus, I would say. So this is a long-term strategy, and we're confident that it's what we should be doing.
Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you. Is the ultimate objective to try and get new businesses located here or attract tourists, or
Yes,
what's the focus?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Stetsky for Mayor Price. It's for employment lands in general. So the city, we have two assets, 95A, which is industrial land, and then we have the 50 acres beside the airport, which is aerospace. So those two parcels in specific, and then in the greater sense, it would be into the tourism sector where we're talking commercial and retail investment attraction as well. So there's quite a few different opportunities for us to explore.
Further, council? Thanks very much, Darren. Good news. Final update is from the CEO's office regarding the flag policy for Cranbrook and the United States flags. Mark, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor Price. So last item, staff at the city here and council have all received a lot of complaints about the fact that we do fly US flags, most notably at the entrance, but we also have them at Western Financial and Memorial. In terms of the entrance flag, we did do some looking at the history there, and there was a past, a relationship with Coeur d'Alene at one point in history, but there's really no documentation on why there's a flag there other than potentially part of the sister city relationship, which no longer has been active for quite some time. So the Western Financial flag, at one point, the WHL and BC Hockey League had Wenatchee attached, no longer is. So there was some desire to have an American flag there. And so once we did the review of the flag policy, the previous flag policy and the current flag policy all say the same thing, that we shouldn't be flying flags of other countries. And then, the other side of this is that debates around the council table and within the community take a lot of time when we're starting to debate flying flags of other countries, the pros and cons and what it means. And we're looking at reducing taxpayer expenses on things that really are not core services to the municipality. And certainly the debates around flying flags of other countries chews up a lot of staff and council time and taxpayer money that is really irrelevant to the other countries. So with that, just to say it doesn't meet our policy. The next steps on this would be that flying flags of other countries doesn't meet our policy. So staff would simply remove the flag at the entrance of town and reduce it by one pole, rearrange the flags, and we're on with that. The 2 flags in the arenas would be removed. And then, at the time when a team from another country plays, we could certainly erect a flag at that time. But other than that, that would be the change. So that's the update.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. I think it's important to follow our own policy and be consistent with that. I'm not sure the merits of, if we open the door on flying flags for whoever's coming to town, then we open that can of worms that we've already closed with our policy. So I would rather just follow through on our policy, remove the flag. At this point, it's been an oversight that it has been left up for all this time. And particularly now with threat against our country by that country, it is very important to remove that flag because it looks like, well, I don't want to go into what it looks like.
Thank you. Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you. I agree. Let's follow the policy. In the short time we've been deliberating this behind the scenes, I really don't think the vast majority of the citizens care one way or the other, but let's just follow the policy. With respect, though, to flying another country's flag, I think what we're seeing as precedent in other communities is if there's an event and you're going to stand and sing that country's national anthem, it's good to have the flag present. I don't care if it's Ukrainish or Turkish or a USA one. If you're singing the national anthem, recognizing the country that team or event is participating in here in Cranbrook, the duty is to fly the flag. And they can bring their own flag. We don't have to have our own. But I think for those kind of events, and that seems to be what's occurring in other Canadian communities, have respect for that flag if it's an event that we're going to recognize that country.
Thank you. Brother. Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Moving now on to correspondence. You only have one item of correspondence tonight, and it's from Shauna Lee Kuba, Administrator of the Spirit of the Rockies Society. I have a potential motion regarding this piece of correspondence. Can I get a motion that council receive the correspondence from Shauna Lee Kuba, Administrator, Spirit of the Rockies Society, dated March 4th, 2025, regarding ride-free transit, Saturday, June 21, 2025, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And further, that council approve a donation of free transit for Saturday, June 21, 2025, from 9 o'clock a.m. till 9 p.m. Move it, please. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Peabody. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Great. And that brings us now to Mayor and Councilor's reports and inquiries. Let's start with Councillor Stetsky tonight.
Thank you. Question for our CAO. Elbows up, of course, is the phrase of the week, month, however long it takes, I guess. So I'm curious as to whether Cranbrook is developing, doesn't have to be a policy, but an approach where we buy as much as we can Canadian. And also curious how it works with contracts, because at one point we were kind of bound by some of the trade agreements that seemed to have to consider American contracts. But now that it looks like the trade agreements are being torn up on the south side of the border, perhaps we don't have to even consider that anymore. So just wondering where the city is in their thinking around elbows up.
So Mayor Price through to Councillor Stetsy, since the beginning of this whole sort of change in atmosphere, the city has been practicing a change in the culture of how, like, number one, we always try to source locally where we can, and where we are required to get bids, then how do we do that? And so we do have a number of avenues around that. And so let's just say that we are practicing those. And one of the ways is we do attach ourselves to what's that canoe procurement group across Canada. So it's a group across Canada that sources materials and supplies across Canada. And we have been attached to that for some time, and I'm having another presentation at the managers meeting, not this week, but next, after the next council meeting by that group again, to reaffirm that practice. So we are adjusting.
Councilor Peabody.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilor Blissett.
Thank you. I was in Kelowna for the opening weekend of the Briar. And when I was there, a waitress in a restaurant we were in was saying she had moved to Kelowna from Winnipeg, and just how, she was a big curler back in Winnipeg, but how expensive it was to curl in Kelowna, and she really couldn't afford it. So I suggested she might look at moving to Cranbrook, because first of all, well, I believe rent is cheaper, but I don't know that for sure. But I do know the curling club fees are less than half of what they are in Kelowna. Anyways, great event. And yes, and further, and this will be my last curling mention here, we are having the Jimmy Hong Memorial Fun Spiel at the Curling Club this weekend. And Jimmy Hong was a lifelong curler and curled into his 90s. He passed last summer after the curling season was over, and his family has organized this fun spiel. So there's 24 teams on Saturday, and it should be a great time. So anyways, an important aspect of recreation in our community.
Well, thank you for that, Councilor Blissett. So are you suggesting that we could double our fees at the curling?
No,
I'm-
I was going to say part of the reason our fees are low is because of the fundraising that the club does.
know, I'm just.
I should have mentioned that at the time, but thank you for spurring me
And
on.
thank you for the clarification for the public. Councilor Ray.
Thank you. I thought Mayor Price was going to offer to organize a team to go in the Bonspiel. I thought that was what was happening. So it's been a busy couple of weeks for me here in Cranbrook. On Tuesday, March 4th, I was pleased to attend an event for female entrepreneurs put on by Community Futures, the college, and WeBC. So that was an excellent event. Great to see a room full of female entrepreneurs in our community. It was very good. And the next day, on Wednesday, March 5th, I popped into the job fair up at the college, and the city table was hopping and the RCMP table was hopping, and the whole event was excellent. The college always does a very good job of that, but certainly lots of action at those two tables that are close to our daily operations. Saturday, March 8th, of course, was International Women's Day. And so I just wanted to highlight for International Women's Day, we're, just about a little less than 2 years out to our next election here in municipalities in BC. So if there are any women who are considering running for election, they might want to check out equalvoice.ca. They work on improving gender representation in Canadian politics, and there's an online campaign school coming up this spring. So if there's any women who are considering that, that's a potential resource out there. And in coming events, this Thursday, March 13th, there's the Chronic Wasting Disease Forum at the Heritage Inn. Starts at 7 p.m. Organized by the East Kootenay Wildlife Association, as well as a number of other similar organizations. So if anyone is interested in that issue, I would certainly recommend attending. I've attended all the forums that have been held to date, and excellent information, research-based. And yeah, if anyone's interested, I would encourage them to attend.
Thank you. Councilor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. It was great to see that we looked at some of the Wildstone urban holdings and neighborhood planning and updating those and moving those urban plannings forward, just like we've been doing previously with Shadow Mountain. I mentioned that, but in between Shadow and Wildstone, we've got a number of zoned rural large holding lands, and I think the clock is ticking on when there's a transition between different tax structures. So I think it's timely for senior staff to meet with council and look at what that is in its entities plural, and how do we want to address that with respect to OCP planning, reserves or whatever. It's rural now. Do we want it to sprawl into rural sprawl or urban sprawl, or put reserves on them? I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have sooner than later as that clock is ticking.
Yeah. Councillor Graham.
I have nothing to report.
And I have nothing to report. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Peabody, all in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you. Good meeting, guys.